Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about the failure of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves earlier this year. And we're going to talk about how it may not have been Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves' fault at all right? So there's something very unusual happening right now in film, and that is the quality of the movie has nothing to do with... We've reached a point where the quality of a movie has absolutely nothing to do with the box office of the film. All right, so let's get into it. I'll give you 3 examples. Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves was objectively a good movie. It failed, right? It cost $150 million plus easily 50 to another 100 to maybe another $150 million to market it, right? It only made a $207 million at the box office. It was a complete and utter failure. And there is zero talk about a sequel for it, right? But it was objectively a good movie. How do we know that? Like, the tomato score is through the roof. Both the critics and the viewer ratings. Its cinema score is through the roof. Its word of mouth was through the roof. It even won over the haters. Like, you have to seek a bad review for that movie, right? And when you find it, the only people who have a bad review for that movie are people who had agendas against Dungeons & Dragons itself, right? So it was objectively a good film. That's not the only film that's performing like that. I just saw Ezra Miller's The Flash. It is the best DC Cinematic Universe film ever. It is the Justice League film. You could forget Zack Snyder's garbage Justice League movie. It was nothing compared to this film. This film had Batman, Flash, Supergirl, and it was far more. And they literally said the Justice League, right? They literally named, they're like, who are we? We're the Justice League, right? And and it had spoilers here. Spoilers for Ezra Miller's The Flash. Here we go. It had Nicolas Cage, Superman, and it had Christopher Reeve, Superman, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. It is not only the best DC cinematic movie ever made, it is also the best comic book movie ever made, period, end of sentence, across the Marvel and the DC divide. It is phenomenal. It is objectively amazing film. It is incredible what was put on screen, and it is the most comic book movie that has ever comic booked a comic book. Like, it is actually a comic book movie, whereas the vast majority of DC cinematic films have been movies made by a studio that absolutely despises all comics, right? Like, by executives who never read a comic, absolutely massively despise comics. And this thing is phenomenal. Andy Muschietti knocked it out of the park. And do you know why it's such an amazing film? Because it was delivered by Dungeons & Dragons, creators, Daly and Goldstein. This thing was literally written by the Dungeons & Dragons people. It's a good movie. It's funny. It has tons of action because it was made amazing by literally Dungeons & Dragons creators, Daly and Goldstein, right? Like, so it's a phenomenal movie. But it did horribly at the box office. It did $55 million on week 1 and had a 72% drop. A drop so bad, it was worse than Morbius's drop. Like, that is phenomenally bad. Right? Like, just really bad. So, it box office failed. Elemental, okay? Tremendous, outrageously good movie. Really, really good movie. How do I know this? I didn't see it, right? I know this because Grace went and saw it and said, this is a good movie. I trust her as a movie reviewer. I think she's right. You know how I also know this? My daughter texted me and said, you have got to go see Elemental. It is extremely good, right? Phenomenal, horrible failure at the box office, right? So right now, the quality of a film is not even remotely connected to how a movie will perform, right? And so why is this? Well, there are many reasons. One, Hollywood writers. They are the deepest villains of modern society. They're on the list. I think they're top 10 deepest villains. Right now, it's a long race for deepest villain right now. But I think overall, Hollywood villain, like one of the things I realize is every Hollywood writer that's been talking about their strike, like opens the entire discussion with, we know you don't care about this. We know you don't care about this. We know you don't care about it. And they're 100% right. Like, you guys, Hollywood writers have been delivering messages with no narrative and no story. They're like, hey, you guys just sit back. We're going to tell you how to live. We're going to give you our values. You don't deserve a story. You don't deserve a narrative. You don't deserve anything useful, right? And so I think Hollywood writers have just crapped up movies across all genres, right? So one, people are like, I'm not going to pay $18 a ticket to go get insulted. And when I say insulted, I'm not kidding there. Watch Space Jam 2. There's literally a scene where LeBron James is like, anybody who would watch this movie is a fool, right? Like, literally, bring LeBron James into the movie and then have a Warner Brothers executive both insult simultaneously in the same scene anybody who even came to they're like, you paid your $18. We're going to mock you in the movie you paid to see. It's astounding. Like, it is just horrendous in addition to that, right? Digital and streaming, right? Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, Universal, they have all trained people. Disney is like, do not see this in the films. Wait to get it for free on Disney Plus, right? Universal's like, 17-day movie window. Do not see this in the theaters. Wait and get it on digital, right? And they have trained moviegoers not to go to the movies, right? So literally the movie studios have trained all of America, and the world follows America, and they have trained them saying, do not come to the theaters. And here we are. We've reached a point. We have fully reached a point where what we have now is we have a situation where there is a complete and utter disconnect. If you have a great movie, it will fail at the box office if the marketing is wrong, if the exposure is wrong, and even if those are done right. I think the marketing on Dungeons & Dragons was spot on. But we have a world where movie studios have told people again and again and again, do not show up in the movies for this. Do not come to the movies. And people are listening. And the writers are like, if you come, we will spit in your face. We will call you unread, unwashed, because you don't have an Ivy degree like this. That is one of the top reasons Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves failed. Not because it was a bad movie or it didn't deserve $2 billion box office. That is, every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.